We're going to take a look at Conor Harris's video on rounded shoulders and thoracic kyphosis. I don't think it's out of line to examine the logic of what Harris is proposing with a critical lens. He has a very successful YouTube channel. Lots of people are listening to what he has to say on the subject. So let's make sure what he's saying is reasonable. I'm skeptical because I don't know that rounded shoulders actually exists. I know that the concept exists, but is it a real thing? Can Harris explain it? Let's find out.
Before we get into that, we need to understand a couple of key concepts about posture and ribcage position and shoulder position. Then we can get into how to actually fix it. Because if you don't understand these things, you're not actually going to effectively be able to implement the interventions.
He says we have to understand these things to make a change in our posture. I agree completely. I'm glad he's really going to give us a good explanation of the context.
A good visualization would be to imagine there's an invisible line going down the midline of the body all the way to the midfoot. And our body is going to alter the position of the knees, the hips, the trunk, and the head in order to stay upright and keep our center of gravity evenly distributed amongst that center of gravity line going down the midline of our body. So for some people, they have a pelvis that is tilted back like this.
He makes the claim that some people have their pelvis tilted back. That's just simply not true. I've observed hundreds of people from the side in a controlled environment. I do it for a living. The man that trained me, Jeando Masoero, has probably observed more than 1,000 people from the side, and I can say with confidence that precisely 0 of them have had their pelvis tipped back while standing. 0. So where did Harris get this idea that some people pull their pelvis back while standing? What's the evidence for that claim? You might say, but there's PPT, posterior pelvic tilt, where the pelvis is tipped back. I've scoured the internet to find a picture of a real human being with PPT. It's strangely very hard. A lot of pictures out there are just people posing, but I did find one. This woman has what's called PPT. What you'll see is her pelvis is ridiculously far forward. So why is this considered PPT? It's because she is not poking her sit bones back and up. Most people habitually rotate their pelvis around their hip joints in a way that causes the front to tip forward and the bottom, the sit bones, to rotate back and up. She is not doing that. Her pelvis is kind of upright. However, just like those with APT, the opposite of PPT, she has her pelvis way forward. That's why her legs are leaning dramatically forward. So no one, not even people with PPT, have their pelvis pulled back while standing. Maybe there is one very unique person out there, but that is not at all a common problem. It may in fact not exist in anyone, anywhere in the entire world. So this makes me question what Harris has seen. Where did he get this idea? He labeled this sway back posture. Look at literally any image of sway back posture that's a real person displaying their real posture. You'll see their pelvis is pushed forward. This isn't even really disputable. That is a basic element of what is considered sway back posture.
And if that's the case and that pelvis is tilted back, that's going to result in rounding of the upper back and a forward head.
He shows rounding of the shoulders as the lower ribs being compressed back. I can tell you that does not happen. There is no one that does that. A person with what's called sway back posture will always, 100% of the time, have their lower ribs pushed forward. Again, just look at an actual person who is said to have sway back posture.
And which came first, the chicken or the egg? It's hard to say. It's usually a global strategy, but as one goes back, something else needs to come forward or else you will literally fall back.
He says these people are at threat of literally falling back. No, a lot of people are in a posture where they are essentially falling, and all of them are falling forward. Basically, no one keeps their weight too far back in standing. Notice that he's not showing a single image of a human being. He's got some ideas in his head, he has a conception. Does that conception play out in reality? I can show you image after image. Can he show you even one that shows what he's saying? Just because you can bend a skeleton to demonstrate what you believe doesn't mean that actually occurs in real life.
Another thing that could happen is that if the pelvis is very far forward at a
Yes, this is what you commonly see. Very few people have what's called PPT, and as we saw, even they have their pelvis forward. The vast majority of people have their pelvis tipped forward like this. It's sometimes called APT. It's extremely common, so let's see what he says about it.
certain point, if you go too far forward, you might fall flat on your face and you're going to lose that center of gravity control. So you might need to bring something back.
Yes, true. Many people are falling forward, and so they have to pull something back to compensate.
So you might need to bring something back like this, like your upper back is significantly rounded.
And he again shows the lower ribs going back. This honestly borders on insane, and I'll explain why. When a person's pelvis is tipped forward, they will always pull the top of their rib cage back to compensate. I can show you image after image after image after image. Every single one, without exception, shows the angling back of the sternum, the back line of the body angled backwards, the rib cage angled back at the top. Every single one, the lower ribs are forward. Every single one. But he doesn't mention that. He shows the lower ribs going back. That isn't real. That doesn't happen. He calls this hyperkyphotic. Let's look up an image of someone with hyperkyphosis. Again, we see the top end of the rib cage leaning back. The lower end is forward. So why is his model totally counter to actual reality? Now, there are occasionally very old people or very essentially disabled people who will have their sternum super low and forward, and they'll be massively hunched over. Again, even then, you'll typically see the upper end of the rib cage angled back, but occasionally, in the worst cases, you might see that dropping of the upper end of the sternum forward. That's very rare though, and not relevant to most people. A person in that condition would likely need a walker just to get around like that. And as we saw, the idea that the lower ribs go back is contrary to what's actually documented as hyperkyphosis. What I don't get is who told him this stuff. There's no way he observed these things in real human beings, and it doesn't match up with x-rays or even conceptual diagrams. Where did this idea come from that people are habitually pulling their lower ribs back? It's absurd.
So the point is you can't fix this unless you understand everything that's going on down below it. So any effective intervention needs to be able to eventually integrate what's going on at the head with the rib cage and trunk to the hips and to the feet. Otherwise, you're just going to stand up and go back to your old center of gravity strategy. Now that we understand that, let's understand what's happening at this area itself. Typically, when a rib cage is in this position and rounded, it is representing a rib cage that is pushed back, obviously here, but it's actually kind of leaning forward in space.
He shows the upper end of the sternum going forward relative to the lower ribs going back. Again, you never see this. You always see the upper sternum being pulled back.
And so this leaning forward is pulling the shoulders forward with it. This is pulling our shoulders into internal rotation. This is compressing the front side of the rib cage. And so this is bringing the neck forward.
An internal rotation of the arms that narrows the arms is definitely bad. But moving your arms forward in space does not need to narrow the front. In fact, if you get your arms to move out and forward, you will be pulling your shoulder blades apart and widening your back. Most people do have their shoulders and arms pulled in and back, which narrows the shoulder blades together on the back. There is no reason for your arms to be pulled so far back. Typically, what people would identify as bad rounded shoulders is just elevated shoulders, because when the shoulders are narrowed, they're pulled up as they go in. The arms are not being extended away from the body. The arms extend downward. Pulling the arms back doesn't fix this. Often it makes it worse, because pulling the arms back will tend to move the shoulder blades closer together. That is narrowing the back. Some people have this skewed idea that they want to have a puffed out chest and massively retracted arms. There is no logical basis for this belief. Such a posture is produced by dropping the back of the rib cage. The rib cage will end up angled, tilting back at the top and pushing forward at the bottom. The muscles of the upper arms and upper back will be shortened by this, not lengthened. The issue is that people think their only options are to puff up at the front or to slump because they never think to lift the back of their rib cage or to pull their arms out to widen their back. These movements would go against our habits, and so we have a tough time making them at first.
And if you've ever seen any of my other content before, you understand that the ribcage is a big player in the initial stages of what I do. So we need to be able to expand the ribcage in all directions with every single breath that we take.
Yes, we need the rib cage to be able to expand in all directions.
So we need to be able to expand the ribcage in all directions with every single breath that we take. With these people, it's certainly not happening in the front side of their body.
What? It's certainly not happening at the front of the body? That's very false, and it's strange because I've heard Harris talk about how people need more expansion at the back of their ribcage in other videos. Most people can expand the front of their ribcage, but have a very hard time expanding the back of their ribcage. If you ask a person to lift their ribcage away from their pelvis, their first inclination is to lift at the front by going down at the back. What people need to get better at is lifting the back of their ribcage, not the front. Lifting the front is easy because it goes with people's bad habits. People need less expansion at the front and need to gain the ability to get more expansion at the back.
So we're going to teach our body what it means to actually utilize a rib cage that's in a better position. And then finally, we're going to stack our head over our rib cage, over our hips, over our foot in a more effective way that aligns our center of gravity. And that is the true long-term fix. The more you do this, the more you reinforce it.
He says we need to stack along the center of gravity. That sounds good, but it ignores the fact that we are not a stack of objects. We have tendons, ligaments, and fascia that function through being tense and taut. If you stack your body in such a way that your elastic tissues are limp, then even though you are stacked with gravity, you're missing the function of these key tissues. This is the problem when you don't have a clear conception of what good posture is. I imagine he would just say that posture is being balanced. It's balancing over the center of gravity. But as he says earlier in the video, there are all sorts of bad ways that can be accomplished. What actually determines good posture is the proper use of the musculoskeletal system, which means getting the connective tissues to work for you by positioning the bones in such a way that these elastic tissues are taut, not slack. That will produce a posture that might appear out of balance if you didn't know that there are major tensile structures like the IT band and the thoracolumbar fascia that will be made taut by this seemingly out of balance configuration. It's that tension that will keep you upright. Whereas when you try to stack, you inevitably collapse and droop due to the lack of appropriate tension.
This is going to help open up the front side of our rib cage, and I'm sure that you can see how this would carry over to addressing the problem that we're talking about.
This is a bugaboo of mine. If you want to learn how to stand upright, you don't want to lay down on your stomach. Nothing you do on your belly is going to change how you stand. This is especially bizarre because he's massively bending and shortening his back by pulling his upper torso back like this. Let's orient the image based on if he was standing up. Would you ever stand like this? With your upper torso and head retracted this far back? You would obviously fall backwards. You think this is going to help you stand up straight? Bending backwards? What's so strange about this is that most people can easily make these kinds of movements. Most people already have a habit of wanting to shorten their back like this. So what is this helping? You're overextending the front, and so I get it. He thinks there's a lack of extension at the front. But I've heard him talk in other videos about how this overextension causes rib flare. It obviously does because in reality, if you stood like this, you would actually shove your pelvis and lower ribs forward, since you would fall back otherwise.
Starting with your face relatively down, you're going to push through the inside elbow bone right here, all the way up to the inside portion of your forearm. 3 out of 10 push. You're gonna come up, stopping at the point where if you went any higher, your low ribs would come off of the ground right there. You're looking about 4 feet in front of you. You're not too far up here or too far down here. You wanna make sure that your neck is in a position that will allow your airway to work well without overly engaging your neck. Now here's all you're gonna do. Exhale, maintaining slight pressure through the floor. Again, just a 3 out of 10 intensity. Big open mouth sigh for about 5 to 10 seconds. At the end of that exhale, you're gonna feel your lower rib cage come down a little bit into the floor, but you need to stay with that 3 out of 10 pressure, keeping yourself upright. And then you're going to pause, put your tongue on the roof of your mouth. And then after a 2-second pause, you're gonna inhale silently, but fully through your nose. And you're going to feel your front rib cage expand.
The only part of this that I like is that he said breathe in silently. Is your back going to expand when you breathe like this? It can't, because you're shortening it massively. You're arching your back. You're shortening the back of your neck. Why would anyone want to do this? This is going to take you deeper into your habits. But let's jump to the next exercise. Oh my, we're still on the ground. Here's an idea. If you want an exercise to improve your standing, you should probably be standing. Now I know, you might say, it's too hard to stand. We need to lie down so we don't have to worry about our balance and can just work some movements. But none of this is going to help you stand up straight. You need to make those hard movements, not these easy ones where you're half relaxed and half shortened on the floor.
Next, you're gonna take a hand towel and roll it up about this thick. This is about what you're looking for, but it's gonna vary depending on how much support you need.
So I like this. He's gonna put it under his head so that his head isn't too retracted, right?
Place this underneath the apex of your neck curve.
What, under your neck?
So that way,
Come on,
when you're in this position, your chin is passively pointed at the ceiling. Please don't skip this step. It's very important.
Again, we can turn the image and see what this would mean in standing. His lower ribs are forward. His upper sternum is angled back. His head is way back. He's looking slightly up. Is any of that desirable? Why would we want to push our neck forward and our head back? Do we want our neck forward? Didn't he say earlier that having the neck forward is part of the problem?
The last thing you're gonna grab is a dowel or a broomstick, and you're gonna get it about shoulder width apart and then go slightly wider than that. Now, here's the key. Keeping your chin passively pointed at the ceiling, and you're not pushing down into the roller. The roller is just there to help you find those pelvis contacts. You're going to exhale and do the same exact breathing you did on the last exercise.
Why are we locking the elbows? It would be so much better to keep the wrists closer and to slightly bend the elbows out. Then we could pull the upper arms and elbows out and widen our back by pulling the shoulder blades apart.
So don't have any tension in your body really, just exhale with an open mouth sigh for 5 to 10 seconds. And then at the end of that, pause, place your tongue on the roof of your mouth, and then inhale through your nose, not losing much of the side ab tension. What you'll notice is that your front rib cage will expand, and then your hands will go back a little bit further naturally on their own, just maybe about an inch or two. So watch, a full rep will look like this. You'll notice that your hands naturally drift back further and further. This is working on the ability for you to stay stacked within your body and still get some extension and opening of your upper back.
We want to lift our shoulders. Why? Why aren't these exercises aimed at getting the arms out and down relative to the torso? That's how you would widen the shoulder blades and extend the arms.
Now what we're going to do is stack everything together, like I mentioned earlier.
Great,
we're going to get our center of gravity better moving over our foot and stacked over our foot, because when our spine moves into certain positions, certain areas of our rib cage are going to open up, and that is actually specific with how the breath influences the rib cage as well. So what we're going to do is get 1 foot length away from the wall, and we want our feet hip width apart.
I don't know why we're a step away from the wall, but okay.
Now, here's the key. We got to make sure we have the right foot contacts. You want about 60% of your body weight on your heels, and you want that weight to be evenly distributed between both feet.
Put 60% of your weight through your heels. That is meaningless. No one knows what percentage of their weight is going through a part of their foot. The only way people would judge that is with their feeling sense, and people's feeling sense is habituated to their typical posture. If a person is used to having all their weight on the front of their foot, they have no idea what it would feel like to put 60% through the heel.
Now here's what you're gonna do. To start, straighten out your knees a little bit and just get your back relatively flat on that wall. Your eyes are looking perfectly straight ahead. Then what you're going to do is you're going to inhale through your nose.
Why is the back of his head against the wall? Why are his lower ribs forward of any part of his body, excluding his legs? Is that what we want? If so, why?
Is you're going to inhale through your nose, silently but fully, and you're going to turn your hands out until they're facing the wall away from you, and you're going to arch your back and let your chin naturally drop as it does that.
I don't think I even need to explain why this is ridiculous, right? What is this? We want to shove our lower ribs even further forward and arch our back? Is this how you want to look when you're standing? I guess I kind of get it. He thinks we need expansion at the front of the rib cage. But again, this is going into your habit. Most people could easily do this. It would be much harder to do the opposite.
Your knees are also going to bend to accommodate that change in your spine position. So it'll look like this. It should happen sequentially.
Do you see that he's shortening himself? I don't mean just that he's bending his knees. He's dropping his head and compressing his spine to be shorter. Why would we want to practice doing that?
And then as you exhale, you're going to reverse the process. You're going to exhale through your mouth.
There's a lot wrong here, though this movement is a little better in some ways. But why is he pointing his thumbs back? Why is he narrowing his upper arms? There's no reason why he shouldn't pull his arms out here and point his thumbs in. The torso itself isn't in terrible condition. If he would just move his head forward off the wall, pull his upper arms out, and point his thumbs in, it would be an okay exercise for extending your arms.
Straighten out your knees. Your low back is going to flatten out against the wall with some of your upper back, but your shoulders are going to round forward. This spine position is more associated with exhalation.
Preposterous. That spine position has nothing to do with inhalation or exhalation. You've widened your back, you've extended it a bit. This would be fine for inhaling. Not perfect, but not bad.
And inhalation is going to be here.
That's inhalation. You do that. You try that. Inhale like that. Every time you inhale, do that. Come on. Is this a prank? You inhale like that and you are not expanding the back of your rib cage at all. What happened to expanding the rib cage in all directions? What about back?
Is going to be here.
This is shoulder blades narrowing of the back.
But with anything else that is on my channel or relevant to my content that's an exercise, execution is absolutely key. This can work for a lot of people, but you gotta make sure that you're dialed in with your form. So make sure that you watch the video a couple times, get a good idea for what you should feel, and then you should see some good things happen.
Form is important, so you should watch a video several times to get the idea of what you should feel. That's how you're gonna know you're doing it right, based on the feeling. Are we that good at feeling things out? Wouldn't it be better to video record yourself? To have a mirror so you could see what you're actually doing? Let's wrap things up here. The exercises were obviously not going to make sense because the conception of the problem didn't make sense. Overall, the thing that I really like is that Harris does seem to be aimed at affecting the torso and the ribcage. If the arms are out of position, they're out of position relative to the torso. The solution is not going to be in addressing just the shoulders or arms. We have to address the torso. So I love that. But Harris has the wrong conception of what would be optimal in the torso. He's going deeper into the bad habit rather than making the harder movements that will bring the elastic tissues back into play. These movements that go against the bad habit are not intuitive, quite the opposite, and so you're only going to make them if you really understand the broader context of what's going wrong with a person's posture. But as we've seen, Harris's explanation doesn't match reality. That's a problem, because people are going to believe you when you have a nice presentation like this. They see you even have a skeleton and a fancy animated diagram. People are going to take you at your word that they're pulling their lower ribs back and rounding forward with their upper torso. If you haven't spent time looking at people from the side, how would you have any idea? Most people have never thought about these things. But what he's saying just has no connection to reality. He could not show you a picture or an actual human being with the postural problems he's imagining. Maybe he could show you some genuine hunchback or 98-year-old woman who's collapsing down. But if you look at people that are asking for help with their posture, you're going to see a very similar thing in all of them. Their pelvis will be tipped forward and down at the front, with the exception of PPT people, though again, that's very rare. It exists, but it's very rare. Regardless, either way, the pelvis will be forward out over the feet. That's always what you will see. Here's a simple way to understand what I'm saying in relation to fascia and connective tissues. The IT band is a major fascial structure in the leg. When your pelvis goes forward, your legs lean, and the IT band gets shortened. The ends of it come closer together. When you pull the front of your pelvis back and up, the pelvis rotates relative to the legs and stretches the IT band. If the weight of your torso is sitting behind your legs, it will push down on the back of your pelvis, which again will rotate and cause the front of your pelvis to stay lifted. That means the IT band will stay taut and functional if you keep your pelvis upright and with the front in line with the front of the leg while standing. Your psoas muscle group, which is sheathed in fascia, will also be made taut when your lower back is back like this. So do you see how it's not about stacking? We aren't stacking the body directly over the legs, because in practice when you try to stack, you spill forward. If the weight of your midsection goes forward, it takes the pelvis forward too, and you lose the support of your IT band and psoas fascia. It doesn't matter that your stack supposedly goes with gravity, because the malfunctioning of the fascia is producing weak links in the chain of your musculoskeletal system. But back to what we see in those who need postural help. We see the midsection pushed forward, a protruding abdomen. The lower ribs are pushed forward, not back. This part of the body will be the furthest forward point, always. And as Harris said, when you're falling forward, you have to pull something back. And people do. They pull the top end of their rib cage back. This flattens the thoracic curve. It expands the front by shortening the back. Harris's solution says, puff your chest out. Puff your chest out like a fitness YouTuber. That's what's good. But in reality, that's just an exaggeration of the problem. Most fitness people don't have good posture. They have poor posture that they've built really strong. They can still look athletic and strong because they are, but they don't have good posture, and there are consequences of that. When we look at elegant movie stars of the past, a great dancer like Fred Astaire, a martial artist like Bruce Lee, or people who studied posture specifically like F.M. Alexander and his students, we see a very different posture. We see the appropriate thoracic curve. We see an upright sternum. We see a flat lower back. We see a head that is projected forward and up in a good way. These people don't need to push their lower ribs forward or puff their chest or arch their back in an absurd way. And if you want to have good posture, you also do not need to get on the floor and bend your neck back on itself. You don't need to lie on your back and push your neck forward. You need a system that has explanatory power. You need something that reflects reality, something that can be backed by what you genuinely see in human beings. I'm not trying to be harsh here. Conor Harris is in some ways better than a lot of other people that are out there, but very few people in this space know what they're talking about when it comes to posture. This stuff like sway back, APT, PPT, none of it has explanatory power. You can categorize people and say, People that look like this have one thing, and people that look like this have this other thing, but that's not an explanation. And it appears that even an intelligent guy like Harris can't explain what he's talking about. So my last message is a warning. Be skeptical. Be skeptical of what I am saying, and also be skeptical of what anyone says, not just on YouTube. If a doctor or PT or chiropractor or scientific researcher tells you something about posture, be on guard. Do not accept what they say at face value. Ask for evidence. Ask for examples. Make them explain themselves. I'm not perfect, but I can explain the point of view I have. You might disagree with my conclusions, but you can't deny that I'm presenting a cogent argument that has some reasonable reflection in reality. I can tell you what you're going to see in people with poor posture, and I can only do that because I learned from the brilliant people in this field like Jeando Masoero, who is the one who put most of the ideas I'm presenting here into focus. There's a lot of nonsense out there, so be careful. Ask for evidence and reasoned argumentation. And if you found my presentation here compelling, check out some other videos on the channel. I also offer lessons done one-on-one over Zoom where you can learn the system I teach. The lessons are video recorded through Zoom so you can see what you're doing. You won't rely on your feeling sense. You'll actually see what you're doing and how you stand. And if you put the work in, you will see yourself change. You will stand differently, walk differently, sit differently. So if you want to change right in front of your own eyes, try a few lessons out. For more information or to book a lesson, visit my website, mechanicsofpoise.com.